Coming up on We Talk News this week, it's official. The Harris-Walz Democratic presidential ticket is the first in history to back legalizing cannabis. The industry reaction is thrilled, ecstatic, and historic. And on the other side of the aisle, Donald Trump counters using the M word during a decriminalization statement based on the 24 states who've already legalized. And the battle for adult use at the Florida ballot box reaches $100 million as Trulieve and billionaires fuel a bidding war. But Trulieve CEO Kim Rivers is pretty determined. And in the meantime, the USA set a monthly record for the 24 legal states in June with over $32 billion of cannabis sold. And it's finally opening day in Ohio for adult use. Lines and limits welcome adult use of cannabis in that state, and we'll hear from Tim Johnson, one of the state's former law enforcement leaders and a cannabis advocate who worked hard to see this day.
I got to give kudos and a shout out to everybody, as I said, from the activists to the legislator to the creators, the voters, the 2.2 million, everybody played a part in this.
Plus, the Boston Globe newspaper writes a scathing, realistic portrayal about the chaotic Cannabis Control Commission in Massachusetts. That group continues to lose control of the process and regulations in the Bay State and create the wrong kind of headlines for a new industry. All that and coast-to-coast cannabis news on We Talk News with Alaina Pinto. Next.
Music Studio.
We are Pro Cannabis Media.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to We Talk News, Pro Cannabis Media's weekly roundup of cannabis news from coast to coast. I'm Alaina Pinto. We have a ton of news stories this week, from opening day for adult use sales in Ohio to a new national sales record for the month of June to the state of Florida becoming a ballot battleground state for the cannabis referendum. We will start with politics because it's an election year, and whenever cannabis is on the ballot, voter turnout increases. This year, the plant medicine is right in the middle of the race, and now that the conventions are over, the two-party tickets are set. The Democrats have Vice President Kamala Harris and Minnesota Governor Tim Walz. The Republicans have former President Donald Trump and Ohio's J.D. Vance. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is running as an independent. With 90-odd days to go before the election in November, both political conventions are over, and there is a distinct difference between the two platforms and political parties as far as cannabis is concerned. Legalization is now part of the Democrats' agenda, while the Republican Party's platform makes no mention of cannabis. Their candidate, though, does call for decriminalization of marijuana because there are already 24 states with legal adult use programs. This week, Vice President Kamala Harris named Minnesota Governor Tim Walz to be her running mate. Walz's state is just now launching their adult use program, with regulations still being determined. When it comes to the political nation of cannabis, we turn to our man in Washington, D.C., Andrew Behringer.
I'm Andrew Behringer, and this is the D.C. Area Report for We Talk News. As the 2024 presidential election looms, the future of cannabis policy, including the ongoing rescheduling process, hangs in the balance. Former President Trump, the Republican nominee, has recently softened his stance on cannabis criminalization. Trump now acknowledges the widespread legalization across states, saying he's starting to agree a lot more that people shouldn't be jailed for cannabis use. He's even promised a statement on Florida's upcoming legalization measure, which he'll hopefully have a chance to vote on as a resident. This shift represents a departure from Trump's recent anti-drug rhetoric as president. During his presidency, Trump largely maintained a state-level approach to cannabis laws and even criticized his own attorney general for rescinding Obama-era enforcement guidance. However, Trump's record is mixed. While he issued pardons for cannabis-related offenses, including to Alice Johnson, he also reserved the right to interfere with state medical cannabis programs. Trump has also attacked Vice President Harris's prosecutional record on cannabis, implying disagreement with criminalization. Meanwhile, the Biden administration has highlighted its mass cannabis pardons and rescheduling push. As this election approaches, it remains unclear how either administration would handle the rescheduling process, leaving the future of federal cannabis policy uncertain. Make sure to tune in next week for future updates. I'm Andrew Behringer reporting for We Talk News.
His running mate, J.D. Vance, is no fan of cannabis, even though he represents Ohio, a now legal adult use state. Vance's history has been to vote against safe banking, believe it leads to violence and an increase in impaired driving, despite evidence refuting that. Plus, he's been quoted as saying, "It smells bad." His state certainly didn't care about that, though. On Tuesday of last week, when adult use sales began in Ohio, 98 of the 134 medical dispensaries were given commence operations notices to open, and there were ribbon cuttings, lines, and pricing and supply issues. Still, it's the beginning of what many are predicting to be a $1.6 billion state in 18 months. PCM founder Jimmy Young talked to Tim Johnson from an Ohio organization called Cannabis Safety First. He's a retired 35-year-old law enforcement officer, a veteran from the U.S. Air Force and longtime lobbyist for the cause in that state. Tim was proud of the historic day, but expected more.
Kudos to Ohio. I got to give kudos and a shout out to everybody. As I said, from the activists to the legislator to the creators, the voters, the 2.2 million, everybody played a part in this. It's not a one-sided event. I don't think the expectations that we were hoping were met. It was far from when we opened the doors the first day for medical. We literally had lines that you had to wait 2 to 3 hours in. We had hundreds of people in line for our medical program. And this went on for a few weeks, if not a few months, every day at the dispensaries. Now, granted, I understand that, there were only around 50 some dispensaries open then, versus yesterday, we had close to 100 dispensaries opened up. Mm-hmm. But we also have to understand that medical was limited to so many patients. Adult choice is an open market.
I don't know what the future is going to be, but I must say that the hard work that people like you have put in is finally paying off, even though I think most in the industry want it to be more equally distributed. Is that an accurate statement?
Yeah. I think we do want more of a equally distributed industry as a whole. The cannabis community does. And as I think I've told you before, the cannabis community is, the consumers, the patients, and the industry are the license holders. In Ohio, we seem to have a clash. And some of it's good, a lot of it's negative, because Ohio has a $4 to $5 billion illicit market. We know that. Those come from law enforcement, and it's been like figures. I've known those figures for 25, 30 years. And those are, arbitrary, guesstimated figures or whatever, but it's through the work that law enforcement, does, all agencies and so forth. We look at we're legalizing it now. Last year in 23, we did $480 million in Ohio, and we jump for joy, like, wow, that's what we did in our medical. Think what we're going to do in our adult. Well, what we did in our adult last year was $700 million in Michigan. That's what we did. So if we put those two together, we're at $1.2 billion right there.
We'll have that entire interview available on our website, procannabismedia.com, and YouTube channel. Harry Bernstein has more in our Ohio report, now sponsored by the measured microdosing product called Yellow Labs, now available in 40 dispensaries and growing in the Buckeye State.
In Loveland, Ohio, Emily and Mark seek to deepen their bond through intimacy. They turn to Yellow Labs Rose Oil Massage Cream with delivery technology, promising enhanced pleasure and connection. The cream ignites increased sensitivity and arousal as they apply it, kindling a shared passion. Excited by its effects, they find joy in shared closeness and moments of unity.
This is Harry Bernstein with Verde Compliance Partners and the Ohio Cannabis Report for We Talk News. Ohio's opening day for adult use cannabis sales was a notable success, with adults finally able to purchase products at nearly 100 dispensaries across the state. The launch marks a significant milestone in Ohio's cannabis industry as the state looks forward to the next steps in expanding the market. The state plans to award additional licenses to qualified businesses with the goal of issuing up to approximately 300 licenses as set forth in the statute. Notably, 50 of these licenses will prioritize individuals who have been negatively impacted by the failed war on drugs, offering them an opportunity to participate in the emerging market. Looking ahead, there are several issues on the horizon for the Ohio cannabis industry. One major question is how the state will regulate hemp-derived products, which remain a gray area in terms of legal oversight. Additionally, there is an ongoing discussion in the legislature about potential amendments to Ohio's current adult use law, which could bring further changes or possibly challenges to the market and its regulation. That's the Ohio Cannabis Report for this week. I'm Harry Bernstein with Verde Compliance Partners, reporting for Weed Talk News.
The Ohio Cannabis Report is supported by Yellow Labs and BetterWaysToTHC.com. Search for Yellow Labs near me and find one of 40 dispensaries in Ohio carrying these amazing mists and creams.
The United States set a one-month sales record in June with $32 billion sold, according to LeafLink. While California retains the title as the largest cannabis market sales, the scales could be starting to tip towards the East Coast. The tri-state area of New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut are starting to roll out their adult use markets. More and more dispensaries are coming online. New York now has 144, New Jersey just over 120, and Connecticut only has 31. But all of those markets are expected to add close to 5,000 stores over the next 2 years. This development is coinciding with the Empire State's lockdown on illegal operations. Of course, there is still some inconsistencies with the issuing of licenses to social equity applicants in all states. That includes the number one state, California, who continues to struggle with trying to do the right thing, but sometimes with the wrong result. Here's our new California correspondent, Lisa Battista, with more from the Golden State.
I'm Lisa Battista from the Flavor Co. with the California Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. The drama this week was around social equity programs. SF Gate reports that a Sonoma County man, who happens to be white, publicly attacked the cannabis licensing system of being racially biased, even though race is not among the 11 factors used to evaluate applicants. He raised such a stink that the county awarded him a $40,000 grant of his own. Outside of this specific case, there are other questions about how well the system has been choosing applicants who actually fit the criteria. Also, according to the Green Market Report, a Los Angeles County watchdog agency is expressing serious concerns about social equity programs. The agency highlights what they call systemic barriers for applicants, like years-long delays, high state and local business fees and taxes, and complex legal and regulatory issues. Both of these stories underscore ongoing concerns about cannabis licensing and social equity programs across the state. Despite good intentions, it seems harder than ever for anyone to own or operate a cannabis business. Now we move to illegal cannabis. From 420 Intel, we have a report that California authorities have seized over $120 million worth of illegal cannabis since January, destroying nearly 37 tons of unlicensed cannabis, including 122,000 illegal plants. These seizures aim to demonstrate the state's strong support for the legal market, cracking down on unregulated operations that undermine licensed businesses and pose environmental and safety risks. California Governor Gavin Newsom says he's focused on the billions of dollars legal cannabis brings to the state's economy, and he won't tolerate illegal operations. And finally, one fun thing. CBS News shares that Long Beach may soon allow cannabis consumption at public events, potentially sparked by Snoop Dogg's upcoming birthday celebration. The proposal, which reflects California's evolving legal landscape, could make Long Beach a pioneer in integrating cannabis into mainstream public activities. That's it for this week's California Cannabis Report. I'm Lisa Battista from the Flavor Co. reporting for Weed Talk News.
I'm Joe Parsons with the Virginia Cannabis Connection, and this is the Virginia Cannabis Report on Weed Talk News. Former governor and sitting Democratic senator from Virginia, Tim Kaine, has always been a champion for cannabis reform and legalization. Senator Kaine is a co-sponsor for the Secure and Fair Enforcement Regulation, Safer Banking Act, led by Chuck Schumer, and has been a driving force behind the potential move of cannabis to Schedule III. Senator Kaine has recently said in an interview that he would like to see cannabis move from Schedule III by the end of the year, an ambitious goal to say the least. However, he is up for re-election this year, and now there's a renewed vigor in the cannabis movement with the addition of Governor Walz on the Democratic ticket. He signed adult use into law in Minnesota in May of 2023. Vice President Harris and Governor Walz are both pro-cannabis, and with the continued support from leaders like Virginia's own Tim Kaine, may make history and bring us one step closer to ending federal prohibition in America. In a follow-up from last week's Verano acquisition of the cannabis company, they released their Q2 financial and operating results on August 8th. Second quarter revenue was up by 2%. Wholesale revenue was up by 24%. With 82 active retail stores, including 11 in Virginia, they attribute these increases to the new restructuring model. In Virginia, only one MSO operator can operate per HSA zone. With the deal with Verano, the cannabis company can now safely settle into HSA 4. With the opening of their newest cannabis company store in Richmond, that's also in HSA 4. The pieces are starting to fall into place. The protections that were put in place here in Virginia were set up to prevent potential buyouts and a possible monopoly system. And so far, that's been pretty successful. But we can only hope that these same measures will stay in place when and if the adult use program finally launches in the Commonwealth. We can also continue to expect these numbers to grow as the cannabis company has plans to expand in the new adult use market in Ohio. Well, that's going to do it for this week's Virginia Cannabis Report. From the Virginia Cannabis Connection and Weed Talk News, I'm Joe Parsons. Until next time, stay lifted.
Ready to take your craft to the next level? Imagine faster extractions, purer products, and more profits. Sounds good, right? At Pure 5 Extraction, we've revolutionized cannabis extraction with our game-changing technology. No solvents, no heat, just the cleanest, most natural process on the market. Whether you're a boutique grower or a large-scale operation, Pure 5 has the tools to elevate your business worldwide. Visit pure5extraction.com today. Pure 5 Extraction, because your plants deserve the best.
We are Pro Cannabis Media.